In a world where the quality of information available to poorer communities is doctored, tainted and sometimes regressive, where the words fake news have come to mean other people's opinions, it is vital to rely on news platforms with journalists who have feet on the ground and can report the truth. New York Parrot, a New York-based national and global news outlet, is changing the narratives of media operations. We focus on the news that matters, like self-empowerment, entrepreneurship, finances, health, security, politics, and more. We strive to curb violence, racial and economic discrimination, and to promote peace and socio-economic development of multiculturally diverse world. As we give voice to the people, we also give your business a voice and make it heard. Get your products and services off the ground by advertising on our fast-growing platform. With so much of daily visits to New York Parrot, you can't afford to be invisible to prospective clients on the website they trust the most. Our posts reach millions of people across the New York State and around the world. Advertising on our new site will unlock an audience of thousands of potential customers on your doorstep. New York Parrot is born to prosperously speak tomorrow for the voiceless.
Hello, welcome to Foreign Policy Review. I'm Dustin Pickering, and I'm here to host this Year in Review 2022 books. It's in the books. We have Carlo Parcelli and Billy Bob as co-hosts, and special guest Ben Toth. Welcome, guys, to the show. And so let's see, who wants to kick us off with a good discussion?
Well, you want to talk about the Andy Milburn revelations?
Let's do it.
Okay. Well, I'm sure what our viewers are all familiar with this Newsweek article and an interview that with Andy Milburn, a former U.S. intelligence operative, who spilled the beans. He basically said Ukraine was a brutal country, and that he had witnessed Ukrainian soldiers summarily killing Russian prisoners of war, and it's made the rounds. It's made the rounds on the left. I don't know how much. Well, Newsweek being a kind of popular rag, I guess it's been sanctioned as something that could be admitted in the mainstream media. And I would say probably because it's kind of anecdotal. I think there's a lot of murdering POWs from the other side. It goes around. It's historically, of course, even despite what Colonel McGregor says, the U.S. forces did indeed murder civilians in Vietnam. It's probably permissible because it is sort of anecdotal, and it can be easily refuted by someone on the other side pointing to, say, some action by the militias in Ukraine, or the Russian military army, or the Wagner group. Who knows? So anyway,
so that was Go ahead, Ben.
I just wanted to jump in with a little context, just so people know this Andy Milburn guy. He was intelligence, but then he is CEO of this Mozart group, which is a play on words, a response to what the Russians call the musicians, which is the Wagner group, who are extremely good special forces soldiers, what they call private military, but effectively it's like a foreign legion. It's built into the force structure of Russia. So when the French were booted out of, I don't want to screw this up. Mali, thank you very much. They were invited right in and started setting things right. So it's part of the Russian hierarchy. And this guy, this Milburn, this interview, this little video, it was not a sober one. So he was just pretty drunk and casually mentioning what are war crimes by international law. That's what I wanted to say.
So I didn't realize it was that video was from a Newsweek article originally, or Did they actually share that in Newsweek? Because I saw it on the Gray Zone. I didn't realize it was hitting mainstream media. His confession, his drunk confession, was that actually in Newsweek, Carlo, or was it just an expose on his outfit?
I read a short article in Newsweek.
Okay.
There's apparently an extended interview which I have not seen. Now some people in the mainstream media have said that what Max Blumenthal put up was taken out of context. I don't think you can really take that kind of shit out of context.
Yeah.
Come on.
What struck me about it was his his certainty that still, nevertheless.
I believe we got Billy Bob frozen in time. So if anybody wants to throw in some more comments,
hopefully we'll get him back soon.
Yeah,
I'm sure he'll jump back in and be mid-sentence.
I saw the video pretty much going viral on the Twitter and Telegram spheres, so it was very significant there. I didn't actually know it was a Newsweek thing. There was an article.
I think its impact is fleeting, like all these things are. I think we could probably, if Billy Bob comes back, he can elaborate on what he wanted to say. But I think it's probably interesting maybe to move on to the BlackRock story. I think that's one that's not going to be fleeting.
The big one today, exactly.
Yeah, and that basically the context of that is that I can't remember his first name, but the CEO Fink of BlackRock is in negotiations with the Zelensky government to basically pull a Halliburton in Ukraine and rebuild Ukraine after Ukraine gains back the Donbass and the Kherson region and Zaporozhye, all of Zaporozhye, and then goes on to take back Crimea, and then BlackRock is going to jump right in and just out of the goodness of their hearts lend the finance to rebuild Ukraine, having stolen it from the American people. And it will be glorious. The rebuilding will just be fantastic. They'll take Ukraine from being the poorest country in Eastern Europe and make them poorer. That's what they're going to do, and it's going to become
a shining city. Come on, we know that.
Yeah, shining city on the dunghill, and they'll change the name to United States of BlackRock or something, and
my crane
happily ever after.
Our crane,
my crane,
not like that. Our crane, that's nice.
Yeah. I mean, it is just. I mean, I don't have the numbers, but everybody should know. Neither of us prepared for this show. There's no notes. But BlackRock is the biggest, blackest, shadiest not landowning. It's a property management firm. It is the biggest in the state. It's a monolith, and of course, out of the goodness of their hearts, they're going to grow this country up. But that also, if the country still remains under Zelensky's rule, otherwise you can plan for whatever you want. We'll see.
I mean, it basically will make Ukraine one more rental unit in the BlackRock portfolio. It's kind of to me, it's a kind of pie in the sky. I under the Lend-Lease program, the and IMF and World Bank loans, Ukraine is basically subservient to the West for the foreseeable future. I mean, could never get out of that debt.
It's dysfunctional without Western money. It would just everything would stop. All the pay, like the salaries of the politicians, of the government, everything right now is paid by the West. It's not from tax bases. And I think we got Billy Bob back.
Yeah.
And I just want to
welcome back to the show, Billy Bob.
Do you remember your comment?
Yeah, I do. Technical difficulty. Sorry about that. I don't know. The end of the year show, and then that's the first time that's happened. My computer just froze on me. So it just struck me that, Milburn, he had this certainty that regardless of these war crimes, regardless of the evil people, running Kiev, Kiev was, we still need to support Ukraine. Ukraine was in the right and Russia was in the wrong. And it just struck me. I mean, that's just the typical liberal confusion about what's going on and who ought to have the support of informed, moral people. And so I run into these kinds of people a lot. They'll concede, yeah, well, sure, there's all these problems, but we still have to side with Ukraine against evil Putin or whatever. And it's disappointing that so many people in the West buy into this pro-Ukraine, anti-Russian, sentiment. And it's totally has no place in. You can only do that if you don't understand reality. Is my
coming to reality, I think we'll get back to the WEF, which was part of that interview with BlackRock person. But on that, did you see Lindsey Graham this week? I think out of all places, I saw it on Fox News, and it was basically still the same script, the same thing, basically a Moscow Maidan. I mean, the only way out of this is for Russia to collapse. Putin's gonna be out, and we move in. And he still says this on live television after 10 months. Talk about that and connection with reality. It's so out of this world to me.
Yeah, and the Ukrainian military figure, I can't remember his name offhand, who basically said the same thing. And I know they don't believe it. I don't know what their
Zaluzhny
plan is.
The military leader.
Yeah,
Valery Zaluzhny. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he basically said that they're going to take back Crimea. I mean, 95% of the people vote to leave Ukraine. I mean, you take it back, it's going to be under very shaky circumstances, my good man.
Well, they'll just do an ethnic cleansing, and the media won't cover it.
See, that's what they were preparing to do.
Yeah.
When Russia stepped in, they
for 8 years.
Yes, 8 years. Yeah. Plus, they had amassed 80,000, or an estimated 80,000 troops on the border. What do you think on the border of Donbass, or on the whatever you would consider?
Yeah. This was reported by the OSCE, I think, the night before the so-called unprovoked so-called invasion. The number of shellings. There wasn't a fire, a stop. Oh, Jesus! Sometimes I'm missing the English words. There was an agreement that we wouldn't shell it. It's just spiked like that. It absolutely spiked.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I was going to say that's how the Western media was so sure that Russia was going to do something because Kiev was provoking them, unbelievably. And so you remember in the months preceding the actual response from Russia, the media was saying they're gonna attack today, and they were giving hard specific dates because they knew that the provocations that Kiev was engaged in were going to elicit a response. But yeah.
And Russell Bentley on the ground right there in Donetsk was pleading. He was, I mean, and what I like about Bentley, what I really liked about Bentley, he was very clear that these people are Nazis. He was very, very clear on that topic. And as Scott Ritter has been vociferously clear, that has to be drilled into the general population's head. These people are Nazis. Now, if you want, we talked a little bit earlier about the Devil's Chessboard, about Alan Dulles. That's one of the things you realize when you read books like this, about Dulles, is he loved Nazis. He loved Nazis so much more than he loved communists. I'm surprised we ever got into World War II, to tell you the truth.
The Soviets forced you to, because they were winning.
They were winning, exactly. And you just read about some of these. Prescott Bush, the Roosevelt administration had to literally use a department it created to prevent people from wealthy individuals, companies in the U.S. from doing business with the Nazis. And they had to take Prescott Bush and his companies all the way to the limit to get them to stop.
Yeah, there was a strong
Nazis.
a strong majority, or minority, maybe obviously minority, a strong minority of the bourgeoisie wanted to join the war on the side of the Germans.
Oh, they
So there was.
supplied not just oil, chemicals, technology. A lot of Western, you probably have a good research on this, went into Nazi Germany, into their little corporation.
Yeah.
There was a lot of Western support until it was obvious, well, they're not going to win. Yeah.
Well, there's that pact speech by the Nazis, by the American Nazis at Madison Square Garden,
Yeah.
just prior to the U.S. involvement in World War II. And then of course, I don't want to get too far off topic here, but there's all of this information now about the Pacific Theater and how much the Roosevelt government knew about the Japanese attack on the Pacific Islands, including the Hawaiian Islands, and they knew a lot. And as I pointed out on the show, one day I'm sitting in my bookstore and I pull off Joseph Grew's memoirs off the shelf and I begin reading about all of these warnings. He was the ambassador in Tokyo at the time. All these warnings he was sending the Roosevelt administration because the Roosevelt administration was protecting the supply lines of British oil exports through the South China Sea, and he said, "Look, you're provoking these people." Then of course British intelligence was providing information to the Roosevelt administration. And there were other indicators. The Australians, yes, of course, and obviously the Roosevelt administration, who wanted to get into the war, that for their own reasons ignored all of these warnings, and of course you had Pearl Harbor. So it's basically sacrificing 2,941 Americans.
Yeah, for a good excuse to get into the war.
Get into a war. Now you can make all kinds of judgments about that if you want, but and as far as a just war goes, and my visceral hatred for not the Nazi ideology.
Let's
I share that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Nazi ideology, and when we accuse Ukraine of being proliferated with Nazis, what are the characteristics that that mirror the actual Nazis in Germany? Because this is a debate, right? This is a point of contention. A lot of Westerners say, "Oh, that's the Kremlin talking point." But when we talk about the Nazis, I think we're talking about their ultranationalism, their intolerance for other ethnicities and other cultures, and their hatred of ethnic Russians and Russia. So that's the Nazi-ish ideology is anti-Russian hatred, which in Ukraine, where almost half the people are ethnic Russian, before Crimea left and the Eastern Donbass left, it's just setting the stage for a civil war, which is of course what happened and what Russia ended up intervening into. But can we maybe kind of crystallize what we mean? Because the word Nazis is thrown around a lot, and the left accuses Wagner. Oh, Wagner, they're the real Nazis. You hear that all the time. So when we talk about Nazis being in charge, we're talking about actual Nazi organizations that run actual Nazi children's camps. But generally what proliferates in Ukraine is the ultranationalism and the hatred for ethnic Russians, the outlawing of ethnic Russian media, ethnic Russian politicians, assassination of reporters, assassination of politicians, and the outlawing of the Russian language. I mean, a total hatred for everything Russian is at its core part of the Nazi ideology. Anybody want to add to that?
I'd like to, yep.
Yeah.
I think it's not just hatred and sort of we are different. We have this culture that is separate from Russians, but it's also Aryan superiority. That is absolutely the case. I saw Christmas carols being sung by grown Ukrainians, and it was all about those Orc Muscovites being dead or being gone. The previous prime minister talked about them as live. They will either live in the basement or they'll be gone. It's absolutely looking down on them, and they still have these summer celebrations with kids, with those braziers familiar to us from history, those fire things, and they burn Viking ships. It's very much that Nordic pagan. It's the same route. It's the same message. And this motion of calling a cab that I did last time, it's there. When they went, CNN went into Kherson City, which was recaptured, which, you know, it was basically, we are going to give you back this land. We don't want to fight. They went in and did the victory. In one day, they were told to leave because they had a video. And just 5 seconds into the video, someone did that and said, no, you have to go. CNN was busted from Kherson because they just showed what this is. It's the Bandera ideology. That's my 5 cents.
Yeah, let me just read a short paragraph from Doug Valentine's book, The CIA is Organized Crime. Very, very eloquent title, by the way. Valentine says, apropos of this, sure, the history of U.S. intelligence operations in Ukraine is educational. OSS officers, that's the precursor to the CIA, in World War II released Stepan Bandera from prison in 1944. Bandera was a Nazi collaborator whose militia slaughtered Poles, Jews, and communist workers on the Eastern Front. The U.S. recruited Bandera so he could fight the advancing Soviet Union. Nothing has changed. Just over 10 years ago, the CIA initiated its Orange Revolution for the same purpose, to thwart the Russians. It was one of the first color revolutions, and it involved the same people the CIA employed in its coup in 2014. So it's been they have a long history. In fact, a number of Eastern European nationalist organizations, the brutality of the Bandera people shocked the Nazis. And it
was too bad. It was just too brutal for them.
They had to throw him in prison for a while, so he wouldn't go around just.
And do you know, it was Reinhard Heydrich who said this is a little bit too brutal, and he was the absolute top. He was the guys who came after the cleanup crew who were absolutely brutal. And he said, "Oh no, this is too harsh for me." Reinhard Heydrich, just Google that name.
Right, and this is no Reinhard Gehlen spy operation here. This is just extinction, extinction squads of people. So, and it's still in their system. They talk about the Azov being absorbed into the Ukrainian military. No, it was the Ukrainian military that was absorbed into the Azov. and I'll tell you, I'm going to make one other statement here. Is that one of the reasons that on January 6th that the National Guard didn't show up and the U.S. military didn't show up to get the people out of the Capitol was because the U.S. military is so full of Christian evangelical nationalists, they cannot be trusted. They cannot, and this goes for the police forces too. They cannot be trusted to do what they're expected to do. If those forces were used, there was a good chance that a good number of them, armed, would have switched over to the side of the so-called insurrectionists, and that's why there was a hesitancy called. And what's the greatest indicator of that? Is that Trump thought he could bring 10,000 National Guardsmen down to protect him as he walked to the Capitol. He wanted 10,000 National Guardsmen brought down because he knew that the U.S. military, the U.S. police forces, and U.S. intelligence is absolutely soaked in this kind of Christian purity, white Christian purity that dominates the MAGA movement, and I think that was their hesitancy. Can we trust these people? Can we trust the military at this moment? I mean, look, the analysis is not that clear, but I'll just want to say with the bonus army, when they wanted to get their bonus after World War I early because of the Depression, and they were camped here on the Mall, and Smedley Butler gave his great speech to them and all the great populist, And then the next day, Douglas MacArthur with Dwight D. Eisenhower and one of the other major George C. Patton with under the command of MacArthur.
Yeah.
Patton and Eisenhower drove the bonus army from Washington, killed a few of them too. These guys that fought in the trenches of World War I. So you tell me that which way are these guys going to go when you get them out in a situation like the Trump situation in January 6th. And I think that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, it's interesting to conjecture about the how deep and how big the split was within the ruling establishment between the Trump faction and the establishment. I think the establishment had a clear majority, and that's why it's called the establishment. And I think Trump supporters were a minority, and they just never were able to gather as big of a majority to to take power and to overcome the entrenched establishment. But what one thing is for certain, and that's the Western ruling class is not restrained by any morality, right? They will work with Nazis. They will work with narco-terrorists. They will work with the most extremist and intolerant Wahhabists, to further their agenda. And they will destroy societies. They will murder, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, in furtherance of their, geopolitical interests. And so in Ukraine in World War II, when they worked with Bandera, when they set him up to fight their allies, the Soviets, that should come as no surprise that they're doing the same thing again today. And they were more than willing to put in power this kind of ideology, to empower this kind of ideology, to be an anti-Russian bulwark. But yeah, I don't really want to go off on the January 6th tangent. But
Me neither.
But
I do.
Coming up on the anniversary.
Because I got, and I'll just say one thing. It's because African Americans and people of color and minorities don't have either side supporting them. They don't have MAGA supporting them, and they don't have the deep state supporting them. They're out there. Naked.
In the cold
slaughtered.
currently, yeah.
They're out there to be slaughtered by both sides, and that concerns me. The neighborhood I live in, for example, when I go to my grocery store, I'm often have a clear example of how multicultural a place I'm living in, and I like the people. I love them.
yeah,
We'll take a brief break, but we'll be right back with some more discussion. America Open Market, AO Market, the best digital market for humanity, is a free multilingual borderless market open to international sellers with various languages included. With America Open Market, you may start selling in minutes after filling out the form. Comprehensive dashboard where you understand your sales, orders, and customers is available. You get paid directly, securely, and instantly on the America Open Market. You can sell your house, car, electronic laptop, CD player, boombox, phone, headphones, furniture, and clothing, and anything on AmericaOpenMarket.com where all your sales and customer needs are met. Register as a merchant today. You will not regret becoming a vendor at America Open Market. For further inquiries, contact us at aomarket@gmail.com. AO Market, best digital marketplace for humanity. Are you curious about financial literacy? Then take a look at Professor Anthony Rivecchio's new program on Parrot TV. It's called Financial Focus University. This is an excellent program to learn about questions related to your own finances post-COVID, and how you can manage your money, how you can work with your tax situation. And this is an excellent and informative discussion of financial literacy. With Professor Anthony Rivecchio, your financial problems will be solved at Parrot TV with Financial Focus University. Welcome back to the Foreign Policy Review. Thanks for viewing today. Please subscribe to our channel. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. If you want to watch previous episodes, please do so. So let's keep going on with this discussion.
I had a few things I wanted to jump in with. First of all, before we have the whole hour without meeting Slug, who
Before you started talking, that's what I prepared a little introduction because I'm in Eastern Europe. You know, this is Adidas. It represents the East from the 1980s Moscow Olympics, where they first had a Western company doing 2 stripes, not 3. None of that capitalist extravagance. And then there's the West, which is Guinness. And right here next to me, I'm so ashamed that I didn't bring her on last time, is Slug the Pug. I wondered if she would still be blurred, but it seems that she is crisp. There you go. Finally seen on camera. Thank you for that.
But yeah, I didn't want to forget again to put her on, or hit her, right? Her.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you were mentioning before the show, Ben, there was several things that happened this week that were kind of some of the things you wanted to discuss. It's, just a big geopolitical shift away from the West and towards the East. You wanna talk about that a little bit?
I'd very much like to. I mean, what grabbed my attention nearby, first of all, obviously, was Kosovo, which we discussed last time, so I don't need to add to that. But things have come down. The alert level of the Serbian armed forces have gone down, so crisis averted for now. But what was interesting to me is that on an interview with, I think, Pink TV, President Vučić thanked the diplomatic and political assistance of Russia, China, and India, and I never heard that before. So it seems there are other big players that we don't see, behind closed doors, sort of calming the issue down, which means the NATO trap didn't work. And from there, the year to me is this massive, massive shift, triggered by the US, obviously, but towards Eurasia, towards the East. And just a couple of news items today, after the visit, that Xi Jinping had in Saudi Arabia to the red, actually purple carpet, treated like a king with hundreds of envoys, lots and lots of agreements signed. We don't know what currency, but we know it's billions worth. After that, now there is a burgeoning just 2 hours ago, China reveals plans for a military cooperation with the Arab states. I think that's enormous. The second thing that is enormous is that Sergei Shoigu, the defense minister of Russia, organized in Moscow a meeting between the defense ministers of Syria and Turkey. And you guys probably know that war. It's 11 years old now, and it started with absolute US, the Turkey being a US lackey. Yep, we're going to go in there, we're going to carve it up our way, and then Russia came in and just saved the Syrian government and Bashar al-Assad. And now that Turkey is going to be the gas hub, the important player, he's played very well this year, they are sitting down. Not Assad, not yet. He's not ready for that. But the defense ministers are sitting down, which I think is enormous. It could bring an end to the conflict, and the Kurdish people who are very much propped up by the US. I would think twice if I were them. So there's these enormous shifts towards the East, and that's pretty much what I'm paying attention to recently. Not just the regional stuff, but as I said, I didn't prepare for this one, no notes. I'm basically mostly here to listen, and if we get back to books at any point, I can list a few that I've read this year too. But yeah, the big picture is what interests me a lot.
No, you're doing very well. I mean, with that discussion. I mean, that exegesis you just presented. The Kurds are I don't. How do you feel ultimately about the Kurds? I know that the PKK and the Barzani clan have been tricked by the U.S. several times. Yeah. Put in basically left out to hang. How do you feel about the future of the Kurds in general?
Not, for the people, not good. But since I wrote an article about Kosovo, a lot of people from there, from Serbia, from Croatia reached out to tell me that there are Serbs there, there are Albanians there who just want to be left alone. They just want to live in peace. But it's these forces like the Pristina Authority who are stirring up trouble for them. And I hope the Kurds can also get rid of this yoke of the troublemakers who were fooled by the US. Otherwise, it's the same as, well, the Ukrainians fell for this trap. The Chechens, a similar project, fell for this. And there's no light at the end of that particular tunnel. But
what about the trap of oil?
Trap.
The fact that when you have oil, you're a target for
yeah, that is exactly where the oil fields of Syria are, and that's where the US armies are still patrolling. I don't know what comes next. I just think it's significant that the former opponents are talking.
Yeah.
No predictions from me,
Oh, and I mean, it shows the contrast between what the East, Russia, and China, their view of the world is peace through mutual prosperity and working towards facilitating relationships between everybody in a peaceful way, and the West that is the opposite of that, right? The West is stoking war, stoking violence in order to maintain and increase their current hegemonic status. And they're beside themselves with fear about a rising Russia, a rising China, and they're starting these trying to incite violence in all these places and chaos, and they're willing to destroy entire societies to maintain their hegemony. I mean, what else can you say about Syria if it wasn't a willingness to destroy Syria, overrun it with intolerant jihadists, and put at risk millions and millions of Christians? Which is what would have happened if Russia didn't step in, if Iran didn't step up, if Hezbollah didn't step up. Syria would be like Libya, a failed state terrorist haven, and it would be awful for the people that live there.
Thank you for mentioning Christians, because most people don't know, but the oldest Christian monasteries are also in the Levant, in Syria. So it's very interesting. But yeah, basically the West lectures or threatens, and it finds any kind of tension within society. It could be religious, it could be ethnic, historic, whatever, and it amplifies that until you are destroyed if you disobey. That's the playbook. The East, there's another example I can bring here, is the diplomacy, and just based on mutual interest. We are not exporting the system like the Soviets did. We are not going to tell you what to do internally. Agreements that benefit both of us. And I think it's no coincidence that Dmitry Medvedev met with Xi Jinping high above his station. He met with Hu Jintao earlier, but he was a president of Russia then. That was normal. But he went with the foreign minister, with the president of China. He, multiple sources say, forwarded a signed letter from Putin. Nobody knows what's in it. Unreliable sources also say he delivered another thing back. And a week later, China is showing signs of opening up, meaning at least the quarantine will be abolished on my birthday, January 8th. Next year. Is that a coincidence, or is that also this diplomacy in action? I don't know, but it's definitely not the same as Biden's Africa summit, which was another lecture. Do this, you get a little money. You don't do it, we hate you. And that's what they're used to. We are the kings of the world, and you're going to obey. That's the main difference for me.
So I'm very optimistic. I'm very optimistic about the future because of the adults in the room that I think are managing this decline of the West, and I think it's got to be very carefully managed. And I think that's what they're doing, and they're trying to do it with as little fallout, as little destruction to the planet as possible. But the U.S. is willing. Go ahead.
No, I see what you mean. Not managed by the Washington or the Biden White House. No, but managed by China and Russia. That's what you mean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And India, I didn't realize India was, you had mentioned, they were helping out with the Kosovo situation, which is great.
Thank them. I mean, Jai Shankar, you should pay attention to him. That's a foreign minister. And he was like half a year ago. Europe should learn that Europe's problems are not the world's problems. And he's increasingly assertive like that. They still have tensions, even border tensions with China. Nothing's perfect. But, they're getting massive amounts of oil from Russia and then reselling it to the EU as theirs with twice the price. So they get huge benefits, you know,
Yeah.
now that the oil price cap is here and there's a decree by Putin that anybody who practices it will just not get it. Instead, the Yamal 2 pipeline is being built that can send all the gas earmarked for Europe just a year ago. All of that can go to China. They don't care. They've been telling us, Lavrov been telling us, Putin, everybody, that you have broken our trust and we don't care about Europe anymore. We don't see you as partners. That's a big shift.
Do you think the State Department was blindsided with Saudi Arabia, with India not fully jumping on their anti-China bandwagon? I mean, I think they're a little bit surprised by that.
Saudi Arabia, the Chinese Saudi, the Chinese Arab summit, multiple countries, I'm pretty sure that spooked them because that was huge. It never happened before. Xi Jinping has never been to Riyadh. That was his first state visit, and it was just enormous. And on the other hand, you have the opposite, the clown show, the Hollywood, which was when Zelensky went to Washington. From morning until evening, I just kept reading and watching, and I knew it was going to be the best story in the world, and it was the greatest show in the world. So contrast the two, you know.
Yeah, the Zelensky appearance here was so ultimately so insignificant that we had a guest lined up that wanted to discuss it when it was happening, and when I said, well, we'll have to wait a week, he said, well, it'll be cold by then, and it is. It's a nothing.
It was insignificant compared to bigger meetings around the world, but they had to have the flags, the Nancy Pelosi kiss, give me more money, Slava Ukraini, his voice, I'm practicing. It was a show.
Yeah, we had to leave it up to Tucker Carlson, a Fox News right-wing reporter, to say, why the heck? Why is this guy in a T-shirt ordering us to give him $46 billion more?
You know, traditional media is dead if Tucker Carlson is the one guy making sense.
Yes.
That's so strange for me.
Yeah. Only on Tuesdays, though, apparently. Yeah. The other days, he's just as racist as he can be.
Oh, yeah.
No, he's the worst. And he's a big China hawk. You know, he's like China, they're evil. But it was the same thing all during Russiagate. You know, the whole Trump is Putin's puppet. And, you know, Russia got, you know, the only sane people on the media were the Fox, you know, a few people on Fox News, not even the entirety of the channel, but just a few people. And that's where you had to go to hear some sanity on that particular issue. Yeah. But
contrast that with his twin sister, but very different, the insane Rachel Maddow, the queen. Maddow? I think Maddow is the pronunciation. The queen of Russiagate. There's clips, you know, compilations of Russia.
You know, you mentioned COVID earlier, Ben, and China. Well, I think we can say, I mean, as long as we don't say other things about it. I think we can talk about it. But you mentioned China's going to be relaxing some of their things. So what do you think about that whole thing? It's very weird. Like the media, it addresses the China COVID issue in a very, very strange ways. They always spin it to make it the most negative thing. So China was doing too much, and now that they're relaxing, China doesn't care about their people anymore. But can you just go through from the perspective of the Communist Party of China? You know, what is the reason that their policy is shifting now? Can you tell us from their perspective? Because the Western media does such a disservice; they just spin everything negative. But can you walk us through, the previous policy and why they're shifting to your understanding?
The zero cough policy was initially in place because they treated this as an attack. That's pretty much, I know that because I've spoken to commentators who are in China, and it was a threat. We got to take it seriously. It was mobilized, the hospitals, everything. But after the protest, which I don't think there was a trigger, the Communist Party of China is 96 million people. You know, that's like 4 Australias. And what they do is consultations, not like a little questionnaire, but talking with specialist groups, with people, with everything, listening to their concerns, and they do reform. They change the policy. They change the policy all the time. This is what the West does not do, you know. And they said, okay, we've taken it a little bit too far. It's getting in the way. We really want to reopen, but we have to do it in safe, measured steps. So basically, the quarantine is what's going first. It's going to be more relaxed to travel. But you have to keep in mind that they signed a 27-year gas contract with Qatar. before Qatargate happened. You know, now the Europe hates Qatar because of the corruption scandal. 27 years. The Yamal 2 pipeline, meaning that's uninterrupted development of the economy. So if they open up, they're ready for it. People are going to want to fly, want to take the train, they want to travel, visit family. When that economic machine comes to life, that's the important part of it. I don't think it's that much related to health. It's about we've made preparations that I don't know of, whatever, maybe sanction proofing themselves. It's about we're ready to go. That's the signal. This is all speculation, not fact, but the signal I get is there are other considerations here than just health and talking with people and those concerns.
And I think they've used the past couple of years to develop a better infrastructure that can better deal with mass, a mass pandemic and a whole bunch of people getting sick. So they had very few ICU beds before. They've been working on that. So just putting together the infrastructure that can better deal with the pandemic, I think, they had to buy themselves some time to do that. So they had the policy that they did. But yeah, so interestingly, I've heard that they've already relaxed their guidelines a little bit. So there's even more relaxing coming. You said what, January
8th?
January 8th. And that's your birthday?
The Shanghai, where yesterday they were being relaxed like one every hour, like it was a rapidly developing story. They're doing their own, like even faster than the nationwide. So it's all happening like pretty much now.
Yeah, and that's another interesting aspect of how the government in China works, because you have the central government, but then they delegate things. They put in, basic policies, but those get interpreted differently in different areas. And so a lot of the attacks that you see in Western media, oh look, the Communist Party did this or did this. A lot of times it's a local government, and sometimes the local government is doing things that they shouldn't be doing. But the West, of course, just takes that and misrepresents it and makes it look like, the Communist Party is draconian and the people hate it. When
and it's monolithic, it's all powerful, and it's called the CCP. Whenever you read CCP, that's propaganda because it's the Communist Party of China, CPC. Right. But CCP sounds like the Soviet Union, the CCCP. That's the mental image. You're supposed to think of tanks and gulags, and that's the Communist Party of China, and nothing could be further away from the truth. But that's the spin. China bad, whatever it does. There's pages dedicated to China bad, Russia bad. Just jokes make themselves. And the other one, the great thing I like is in Western media, when something comes out from China, the big capital letter, but at what cost? China did this, but at what cost? Oh, they alleviated poverty, but at what cost? Those are my favorites.
Yeah.
They can't do right, can they? I mean, in the Western
point
of view.
But they give me so much hope and optimism. I mean, what they have accomplished, what what they're going to accomplish, it's astonishing, and most people don't appreciate it. But
sorry again, I hate to jump in, but when I was a kid, my biggest fascination was cosmonauts and Yuri Gagarin, who was in my town. Great. But they have a space program. They have a teacher up in orbit. They have their own space station now, and Russia is leaving the international one, and they have the engine that keeps it in orbit, So while theirs literally falls from orbit, China has its own, and they are doing a joint lunar base with Russia. That's what a big, powerful country can do, and that always gives me hope. Everything from space gives me hope.
Well, do we want to talk about the Jack Murphy article? His blog site, his blog piece. Jack Murphy, I mischaracterized him a little bit before, but he was as Ben described him, former U.S. I guess an intelligence asset, and I don't know.
I think I was talking about the Mozart guy. This Jack Murphy story, you broke it to me. This is about sabotage, right?
Oh, right. Yeah, he also is involved in U.S. intelligence, and he published this story in his blog. He said he couldn't get it published anywhere else about the West, the U.S. Running this ring of saboteurs inside Russia, and the countries that Ben Norton specified in his rundown of this article were the Balkan countries and possibly Poland. I think maybe Romania too. Romania does have a short border with Russia. Oh no, Ukraine. That's right, with Ukraine. But he says that the saboteurs have been responsible for example, uh, uh, bombing sites in Belarus that were resupplying Russian forces in 2000 in at the initiation of the Russian invasion or pre-invasion, and I don't know if anybody's read about this or has any views on it. I know that several people. I'm trying to remember who it might be McGregor who said that no, it might be who said that it's really not the case that that oh right, the part about them being trained in the U.S. is really not true, that they wouldn't have been trained in the U.S. Yet within the same breath, Fort Benning, Georgia is mentioned, which of course we know is the old school of the Americas. And I'm reminded of all the way back to when the United States was supporting an insurrection in Tibet back in the 50s. They used bases in Colorado to train these Tibetan insurrectionists in support of the Dalai Lama, who was a child then. It was basically supporting his brother. But and then they sent them back to be saboteurs in Tibet to make sure to bring back the feudal rule of the Dalai Lama in Tibet. I wonder if you guys have any insights or comments on.
I'm shocked. I am shocked to hear that the West is trying to sabotage Russia and Belarus.
I know sarcasm.
That's
blows my
sarcasm. Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No,
So,
yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, it's expected. It's expected that kind of thing is going on. I am not familiar with that article. I haven't read it, so you brought it to my attention this morning as well. The name, I don't know that guy's. I don't know who he is. The name doesn't ring a bell. But it's good that these kinds of operations are being exposed, and of course they're going on. And this is the tip of an iceberg. I'm certain. I mean, that's the CIA's job, and they have access to an infinite amount of black money that they can utilize to destabilize and sabotage government. So you have people sitting around thinking of ways to destroy societies and to implode the government, and that's what they do. So I'm not surprised about it at all, but I definitely oppose them, and I'm on the side of the society of Russia. I'm glad that they have good relations with Belarus. I'm glad Belarus was not able to be overthrown in the attempted color revolution a few months ago, or I guess that was maybe even a year ago.
Yeah. I'm just going to add a little bit on Tibet because I like the Dalai Lama actually owned like 4,000 slaves, and the slogan when they wanted to interfere in was "Free Tibet." Well, sorry, it's already freed. The Chinese government gave those serfs freedom. And also, I'm not sure if we want to end on books or just keep it with this story. Also unfamiliar to me. I just watched the Ben Norton video quickly, or I know we're approaching the M mark.
So what kind of reading have you been doing, Ben?
Oh, I can plug, if you want short books, my favorite this year has been Julius Fučík. He's a Czech guy, and it was Reports from the Gallows, or Notes from the Gallows, depending on the translation. He wrote them he got smuggled out from the jail, and obviously it's a communist book. And a longer, much really amazing book was Nikolai Ostrovsky's How the Steel Was Tempered. And that's about the early Russia and the feelings of optimism as they were built, early Soviet Union, as they were building the future. You really get the public optimism and hope from that book were my favorites this year.
The first one, what gallows was he referring to in the first book? Whose gallows was he?
His own. He was arrested. He was in the jail awaiting his death sentence while he wrote these little notes that were then smuggled out and turned into the book.
What government was he arrested by?
The Czech one before Czechoslovakia was communist.
Okay, so that was before the Soviet Union was formed, and that was when Czechoslovakia was governed by basically what? Probably
Jesus,
a fascist
it's
military dictatorship, or
it was the same as we had. We had Kadar, who was our communist leader. Before that, during the time of Salashi, and before that, come on, the rear admiral, the fascist regime, the personal friend of Hitler, which I'm just not going. I'm blanking on.
Mannerheim? No, Mannerheim was
Hungarian guy. He
Finland.
was in the jail. They broke every bone in his hands. He was tortured, and he later became our leader. It's that kind of story, except he never got that fate. But those were
so that was the fate that awaited communists in pre-Soviet Czechoslovakia. Well,
yeah, and Hungary.
How about you, Dustin? What was the best book you read this year, or what?
That's a good question. I'm currently reading. I think it's called the New History. Let me look at it real quick. The Dawn of Everything: New History of Humanity. That's what I'm reading now. It's like 600, 700 pages, and it's archaeology and anthropology from a kind of like an anarcho-communist perspective, mostly dealing with Amerindians and the indigenous people of America and how that their cultures were formed. But it also goes into a lot of really old archaeology and stuff, and it's pretty interesting.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it was very popular. It has over 1,000 Amazon reviews. Yeah.
Yeah.
Grieber and David Wingro are the authors, and Grieber was he passed away, but he was known for his his work in the Occupy Wall Street movement.
David Graeber, the one who wrote Bullshit Jobs, that guy.
Yeah.
He
was a co-author of this book. Yeah, he wrote he's written a lot of interesting stuff.
He has. He's far too horizontal for me, I think he's an anarchist, a flat society man, but he did some really good anthropological work.
How about you, Billy Bob? Do two kids allow you much time to read?
Not really. I read part of something very similar to what Dustin was just describing, but I can't really even comment because it might have been a work by Graeber, but it was the same thing. It's talking about how all these societies formed, pre-civilization. And the major thrust is that, civilization isn't all it's cracked up to be, and people were just a lot happier. For instance, they talked about, one of the anecdotes was talking about how when the white kids, if they were ever kidnapped by the Native Americans, they loved it. And then when they were rescued by the white people, they escaped again to go live with the Native Americans. They just preferred living with the Native Americans too.
You might be reading the same book as me.
it might have been the same book. It might have been the same book, and I didn't finish it.
Yeah, that's exactly what at the very beginning of the book it talks about those things.
But it brings up an interesting philosophical discussion. It talks about is civilization all it's cracked up to be? Should we maybe return to a more pre-civilization existence? Would that be better for the planet, better for humanity, better for our mental health? And I mean, they make a lot of compelling reasons. It's definitely an interesting discussion. Personally, I need indoor plumbing. I want a hot shower. I was
just going to say, let's not return.
I'm not in favor of that, but I understand. I mean, it's an interesting discussion. I'm not persuaded that I want to trash modernity, but that's the whole hour show. So I don't want to get lost because we only have about 50 seconds left. So.
50 seconds. One last book I forgot to mention. Most people turn towards communism when they read Parenti. For me, it was Andrei Vlicek. His book, Exposing the Lies of Empire. I think I mentioned it post-show, but your viewers should definitely read that book. It's fantastic. He's been in 150 countries, always talks to the people in war zones, in places. He does the human story fantastically.
I've got to read that. I've read all of his articles that I come across. I haven't read his book. I don't think I've watched any of his documentaries either, but his articles are tremendous. So, no, I'm going to check that book out.
This is a collection of short essays in different nations, in different regions. It's basically reporting, but in a book form.
Okay, so I probably did read it because I've read all of his articles. So if it's like an anthology, yeah. But Andrei Volchek, amazing.
He's dearly missed.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Ben and Carlo and Billy Bob. Great job with the conversation, keeping things moving. This has been the Foreign Policy Review, and I'm Dustin Pickering. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the channel. Maybe we can get I had an interesting idea. Just somebody mentioned this just now on the comments. Maybe we could get some of our guests together, our previous guests, and create a reading list and put it online, and maybe share that with the viewers. That would be kind of interesting to do. So we can think about doing that. But thanks for watching, and subscribe to our channel, and have a good day out there. And there's the slug.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Ben, for coming on, Ben. Appreciate it.
Yeah, really.
And Slug.
You're right. I'm trying to find our closing market. Our closing thing here has disappeared on me.
Just hope for the best for 2023. That's all I can do.
Right. Excellent. All right. Well, I found it, so it's time to say goodbye. Bye, everybody. Thanks for Happy New Year, everybody out there.
Happy
And
New
have
Year.
a great afternoon.